Israel's Judean desert to the ancient fortress of Masada. Hear how the Jewish rebels made their legendary last stand against the Roman Empire.
Archaeologists were not expecting to find anything new at Masada.
This is a very, very significant site. This is a site that shows where Jews fought for freedom till the very last minute.
The site has been studied for decades, and most experts believed its secrets were already uncovered. That changed the moment a sealed tomb was found beneath the southern cliffs.
An overwhelming body of archaeological evidence is uncovered.
The first team inside reported details that were immediately withheld from public notes. The remains, the objects, and the inscriptions inside did not match the accepted history of Masada.
We don't really know how these bodies got here or what happened to them. They were the bodies of a young man, a girl in her late teens, and a child.
Several researchers now believe someone tried very hard to erase what this tomb reveals: the fortress above the abyss. Masada rises from the Judean desert with a heavy and disturbing presence that feels almost alive. The mountain appears imposing and difficult to approach. The site is associated with fear and suffering due to the events that took place there. Many visitors describe a strange atmosphere around it, as if the past refuses to stay buried. Masada is a vast rocky plateau that was first shaped by the ambitions of the Hasmoneans, who fortified it to protect themselves from constant threats. Later, Herod the Great used it as a private refuge filled with luxury that stood in sharp contrast to the bleak desert that surrounded it. Every corner of Masada carries the weight of these earlier rulers, yet its name became tied to something far darker during the First Roman-Jewish War. According to the ancient writer Josephus, a total of 960 Jewish men, women, and children trapped on the mountain chose to kill themselves in 73 AD. He claimed that the victims led by Eleazar ben Yair preferred death to being marched into Roman slavery. His dramatic description shaped the identity of the place for centuries. The story became a symbol of bravery, unity, and sacrifice.
There's a great debate among the scholars as to whether Josephus's account of Masada is reliable or not.
Yet the deeper people looked into the past, the more cracks began to form in this story. Josephus was the only recorded witness who wrote about this mass suicide, and he did so while under Roman control and protection. No other ancient written account ever confirmed that this event happened in the way he described it. This lack of confirmation created unease among scholars.
I mean, you may not like Josephus, but he writes brilliantly, and that's a heartbreaking story.
Archaeologists spent decades digging through Masada's ruins while trying to make sense of the ground beneath their feet. Many of them tried to match the remains they found with the story that Josephus wrote. When the famous Israeli archaeologist Yigael Yadin excavated the site in the 1960s, he restored Masada as a national symbol, but his findings raised troubling questions. He found none of the large mass graves that should have existed if nearly 1,000 people died at once. He found household remains scattered across different areas in ways that clashed with the idea of a calm and organized mass death. He also found bones that suggested violent struggle rather than peaceful or voluntary death. These differences created a dark and frightening doubt that refused to fade. Masada has always felt like a place holding back secrets. The Roman ramp still clings to the western side of the mountain like a wound that never healed. Yet the area inside the fortress feels too clean and controlled. Large parts of the story seem to be missing. Researchers asked the same questions again and again. Where were the bodies? Why were several caves sealed? Why did the physical evidence refuse to match the dramatic legend passed down for so long? For many years, experts explained these problems as natural gaps in the archaeological record. They said that time, wind, and erosion destroyed the missing pieces. However, a recently discovered tomb beneath the southern cliff changed everything. This hidden chamber contained carefully arranged human remains that had not been touched by animals or looters. The condition of these remains forced a re-evaluation of what might have happened during those final days. The new findings suggested that the legend may have been shaped by choice rather than by fact. They suggested that something far more complex and far more human took place instead of a single tragic act. The possibility of this deeper truth became even stronger when earlier excavations uncovered bones in a cave above the newly revealed tomb. These bones hinted at survivors and divisions among the people on the mountain. They suggested that some groups split apart in fear and conflict, while others faced dangers that never made it into the famous story. Cave 2001, the first whisper of a hidden truth. Long before anyone found the tomb hidden beneath the southern cliff, archaeologists faced another disturbing clue that pointed toward Masada's most stubborn mystery. This clue waited inside a place known as Cave 2001. The cave sat on the southern side of the mountain and could only be reached by lowering oneself down a dangerous cliff with ropes. Anyone who entered the cave stepped into a cramped and silent chamber filled with a frightening mix of human bones. The floor held the remains of men, women, children, and even an unborn fetus still inside the mother's pelvis.
And one of them was pregnant. Actually, they found the fetus and 4 children, so 24 individuals were living here.
At first glance, the scene looked like a simple record of disaster. Many assumed that these scattered bones confirmed the tragic ending described in the familiar story. However, once experts examined the remains with care, the entire assumption collapsed. The anthropologist Niku Haas studied the bones carefully and determined that 25 individuals had died inside the cave. Their physical profiles did not match the story told by Josephus, who described a large group acting together in a single organized act of suicide. The men in the cave were unusually strong and heavily built. The women were younger than expected for families trapped in a fortress during a long siege. The children did not appear to be grouped with parents or relatives. The objects found in the cave created even more confusion. Archaeologists identified small ceramic containers used for storing water or oil. They found pieces of cloth that hinted at clothing or blankets. They also found traces of food. These details showed that people had been living in the cave. The cave was not a place of ritual death. It was a place of survival and fear. It was a refuge where people hid for as long as they could. The evidence suggested that those inside likely died by violence rather than by choice. The most frightening detail came from the bones themselves. They were scattered across the floor and marked by the bite patterns of jackals. The bite marks appeared only after death. This showed that the bodies had been left undisturbed for a period of time before animals reached them. The scene did not match a frantic attempt to dispose of bodies. Instead, it suggested that someone had cared for the dead, perhaps by placing them in the cave and trying to shield them before leaving or being taken. Someone had protected the bodies at first, and only after that unknown period did nature reclaim the space. A second clue pushed the mystery even deeper. Haas received a photograph from the archaeologist Ehud Netzer. The photograph showed a nearly complete skeleton lying outside the cave on a narrow ledge. The bones were positioned with clear intention. The head was turned gently to one side. The arms and legs were arranged neatly. The body appeared to have been placed in a respectful position. This careful placement directly challenged the claim by Josephus that all bodies had been burned or thrown together inside the fortress. The photograph revealed a person who had been given a final moment of dignity in a landscape filled with terror. Cave 2001 forced archaeologists to face a possibility that had been dismissed for decades. The cave suggested that not everyone in Masada had taken part in a mass suicide. Some people may have tried to escape, others may have fought back against Roman soldiers, others may have hidden in different corners of the mountain, some may have died in small groups as they tried to survive the chaos that swept across the fortress. There may have been desperate attempts to flee or resist after the Roman forces reached the mountain. Although Cave 2001 contradicted the official account, many researchers were reluctant to challenge the story without stronger evidence. So they labeled the cave an unfortunate exception. They treated it as an odd detail that did not fit neatly into the larger narrative. But everything changed when a new team began to descend farther down the southern cliff. They wanted to see what waited beneath the cave. They followed the ropes lower into the shadows and moved toward a hidden space that had been sealed by rock and darkness. As they descended, they had no idea that a secret waited below them. This secret had survived longer than anyone believed possible. The descent, an impossible ledge, and the secret it protected. Masada's southern cliffs rise in a way that feels hostile to human life. The rock wall drops straight into empty air, and the height creates a sickening sense of danger, even for experts who spend their lives climbing extreme terrain. The entire area feels like a place that wants to push people away. It was here that modern archaeologists returned with ropes, harnesses, and advanced drones to investigate the ledge connected with the photograph that Ehud Netzer had once shown to Niku Haas. The ledge was narrow, unstable, and hard to reach. For many years, people assumed that this small platform held only the single skeleton Netzer had documented. The ledge looked like nothing more than a lonely shelf of stone above the desert. The new team used updated cameras and scanning tools during their descent. When they reached the ledge, they immediately noticed that the surface did not look natural. The rock appeared strangely flat. It looked as if hands long ago had scraped and smoothed the stone to create a level standing place. When the researchers brushed away the thick layer of wind-blown dust, they saw markings in the surface. These markings matched the kind made by ancient stone-cutting tools. A thin line in the wall behind the ledge caught their attention. The line hinted at a hidden space inside the cliff. The team used ground-penetrating radar to explore the area behind the rock.
such as those collected by a laser scanner, that represent a 3D shape or object, in this case the walkway and stairwells in the cave.
The scan revealed a hollow chamber that had never appeared in earlier maps. The ledge was not a natural balcony. It was an entrance that someone had sealed very carefully. When the team loosened the stone with controlled and steady work, the rock opened enough to allow them to install support beams. The chamber behind the stone came into view like something suddenly exhaled after centuries of silence. Inside the opening, carved into the pale limestone, were several niches. Each niche contained human remains that had not been touched since the ancient world collapsed around them. These skeletons were not scattered like the bones inside Cave 2001. They were placed with great care. The legs and arms were arranged neatly. The spines were straight. Personal objects rested beside several of the bodies. The scene looked deliberate and respectful. The researchers quickly understood that they were standing inside a constructed tomb. The placement of the chamber high on the cliff made its purpose clear. No one could reach it without climbing skills or equipment. This meant the tomb had been chosen for secrecy. The sealed entrance showed that whoever buried the dead wanted to keep the chamber invisible to Roman soldiers. The careful arrangement of the bodies showed a level of respect that had no connection to panic or disorder. This was not the aftermath of a mass suicide. This was an act of remembrance carried out by people who cared deeply for the dead. The existence of this tomb raised painful questions. The tomb suggested that not everyone inside Masada believed in the order to die. It suggested that a group may have challenged Eleazar ben Yair's command. It suggested that some people attempted to escape or refused to join the final act described by Josephus. It even raised the possibility that internal conflict occurred inside the fortress during the final hours. The possibility that some people were killed by others who enforced obedience darkened the mystery further. As the archaeologists studied the chamber, they realized that the remains held crucial information. The bodies could reveal how these people lived. They could reveal how they died. They could reveal which group they belonged to and what they believed during Masada's last night. The answers were locked inside the bones. Silent witnesses. What the bones revealed, that the chronicles never told. The skeletons inside the chamber turned into a source of disturbing new information. Unlike the scattered bones found in the cave above, these bodies formed a clear and connected story. And the story they revealed did not match the old belief that everyone on Masada chose to die together. Careful study of the bones showed patterns that made voluntary death impossible to accept. Several of the men carried unmistakable signs of violence. Their skulls showed the crushing impact of heavy blows. Their forearms had wounds that matched the movements of people trying to block attacks. Their ribs had deep punctures that fit the shape of Roman weapons.
They can see the Roman camp, and they were found by the excavators. There were two piles of bones. One was right here in front of me. The other was just at the other end of the cave.
These injuries did not come from calm or controlled self-destruction. These men had fought to stay alive. They had faced attackers in close combat. They had died because someone forced their deaths. One of the bodies belonged to a teenage girl. Her bones were smaller and lighter than the others. A bronze hairpin lay near her head. Pieces of embroidered fabric rested near her feet. These objects suggested that she came from a family with higher status or greater resources. Her skeleton showed no signs of beating or stabbing. Her lack of injuries suggested suffocation or some other method of killing that left no mark on bone. Her presence among adult fighters created a chilling question. She might have been related to someone in the chamber. She might have been trapped by the same events. She might have been killed to silence or protect her. No one could yet explain why she was placed beside men who died violently. The most surprising discovery came from a ceramic container placed near the eastern side of the chamber. Inside the container were two small scroll fragments. The scrolls were badly damaged, but early analysis identified references to rules about purity and arguments about community leadership. These subjects appeared in writings associated with the Essenes, a religious group known from the Dead Sea Scrolls. The fragments supported the long-suspected idea that members of the Essene community fled toward Masada when Roman forces approached their settlements.
Masada's a symbol for Israelis, so they can connect to moments in history.
The scrolls suggested that deep disagreements existed among the people inside the fortress. They struggled over questions of obedience and control. They argued about spiritual duty at a time when survival demanded unity. These tensions could explain why some individuals ended up hidden away in a secret tomb instead of being included in the dramatic story described by Josephus. The bones carried another layer of evidence. Scientists found tiny traces of desert pollen and mineral dust inside the remains. These traces showed that the bodies were briefly exposed to the open air before they were placed in the chamber. This detail proved that the people who built the tomb worked under great pressure. They likely buried the bodies at night or during a moment when danger pressed in from all sides. The timing suggested that the Romans had not yet taken full control of the fortress. The burial may have happened during a night filled with fear and confusion when different groups within Masada turned against each other. The new discoveries made one point impossible to ignore. The people inside Masada did not act as a unified group. They were divided. They disagreed. Some of them died because of Roman soldiers. Some may have died because of internal fights. The mass suicide described in the legend did not match the reality revealed by the bones, and if the bones spoke of fracture, the artifacts surrounding them revealed motives the fortress's leaders might have preferred forgotten. Artifacts of defiance, objects that betrayed a forbidden story. The chamber held more than just bones. It contained a collection of objects that deepened the mystery of Masada's final days. Each item looked ordinary when viewed alone. However, when examined together, they formed a disturbing picture of disagreement and secret actions. These items pointed toward a level of conflict that the leadership inside the fortress would have considered dangerous and unacceptable. The first object that stood out was a set of bronze scales. These scales were the kind used to measure grain or items of value. Their presence suggested that some people were managing food or supplies outside the control of the main leadership. This hint of independence carried serious meaning. Eleazar ben Yair's authority depended on complete unity during the siege. His leadership relied on strict distribution of food and strict ideological agreement. The idea that individuals controlled resources on their own revealed a threat to that leadership. It hinted at private decisions that broke away from the rules enforced inside the fortress. Near the scales, the team found several small ceramic containers. Each container held residue of date wine.
The evidence uncovered by generations of Israeli archaeologists.
Chemical studies showed that these containers once held wine mixed with substances used to calm pain or reduce anxiety. Such mixtures were rare. They were normally reserved for people with high status or for special religious situations. Their presence suggested that some people planned something separate from the group. They might have been preparing to escape under the cover of darkness. They might have needed to calm someone who was injured or terrified. They might have been ready to resist the command to take their own lives. Each possibility created a darker picture of fear and disagreement. A leather pouch found inside the chamber held several bronze arrowheads. These arrowheads matched the type used by Roman soldiers. This meant they were taken from Roman bodies or collected after small battles. Their presence near the remains of the men who showed signs of fighting suggested that these individuals engaged Roman forces before the final moments of the siege.
We should care about Masada because it's one of the most important battles in Western civilization.
They might have acted on their own. They might have carried out an unauthorized attack or tried to break through the Roman lines. Their actions showed that not everyone waited quietly for the end described in the traditional story. Taken together, the artifacts made one idea unavoidable. Masada was not united. The people inside were divided. Some challenged orders. Some acted in secret. Some may have fought against their own leaders. These objects showed that the leadership's story of unity and chosen death could not survive contact with the physical evidence. The items were buried not only to show respect to the dead, but also to hide a truth that threatened the controlled version of Masada's past. The final and most chilling clue lay in the placement of the tomb. Its secret location, hidden on a difficult and isolated cliff, suggested that someone had gone to great effort to erase a story too dangerous to reveal. A tomb meant to be forgotten. Why the dead were hidden away. The position of the tomb revealed the strongest clue of all. This was not an ordinary burial site. It was a deliberate act of hiding. The people who created the tomb did not want anyone to discover it. They did not want the Romans to find it. They did not want later settlers to find it. They did not want future writers to know it existed. Their goal was to make the tomb vanish from memory. The reason for this secrecy was not limited to respect for the dead. It was driven by fear of political consequences. Masada during the siege was a smaller version of a nation collapsing under pressure. People from different backgrounds crowded together on the plateau after the Roman army crushed resistance across Judea. Refugees who escaped the fires of Jerusalem arrived with shock and trauma. Political zealots carried anger and a belief in violent struggle. Members of the Sicarii brought a history of assassinations and ruthless tactics. Families wandered onto the mountain because they had nowhere else to go. Some members of the Qumran community carried strict religious ideas shaped by years of isolation. These groups did not share the same hopes. They did not follow the same rules. They did not agree on how to survive. Eleazar ben Yair and his followers believed that death would create a powerful symbol.
It's a story of courageous martyrdom. And if the people here were willing to take their own lives in defense of their traditions and their identity.
The people buried in the secret chamber seemed to belong to the groups that did not accept Eleazar's vision. Their presence in a hidden tomb suggested that their voices were a threat to the message he wanted to spread. Some of them wanted to fight until the end. Some wanted to flee and take their chances in the desert. Others wanted to keep the strict beliefs of their sect. All of these motivations created tension. Conflict would have been unavoidable. The evidence pointed toward a moment during the last days of the siege when these divisions exploded. The men with signs of battle injuries may have refused to take part in the planned suicide. They may have prepared to face the Romans in direct combat, even if the fight was hopeless. The teenage girl buried with them created a troubling mystery. She might have been connected to the dissenters. She might have been someone they tried to save. She might have died because of the chaos inside the fortress. Whatever her story was, her placement in the chamber revealed that she was tied to their fate. Those who buried the bodies may have done so out of respect. They may have done so because they felt responsible for what happened. They may have wanted to protect the memory of the dead from the distorted version that the leaders intended to share. Once Eleazar's faction accepted the plan described by Josephus, anyone who stood against it became a problem. Anyone who threatened the unity of the story had to be removed, and their deaths had to be erased. The hidden tomb solved this problem. It allowed loyal followers to honor the dead in private. It also allowed the leaders to protect their chosen version of events. The official story remained clean and powerful while the truth stayed sealed inside the cliff. For Josephus and later chroniclers, the idea of disagreement would have weakened the legend. A divided Masada did not serve their message. A group that questioned orders did not support the image of perfect loyalty. For this reason, the story of unanimous suicide survived while the people in the tomb disappeared from history. The discovery of the tomb does not lessen the courage of those who fought against Rome. Instead, it brings their humanity into focus. It allows them to be seen as real people who made desperate and complicated choices in a moment of extreme danger. Their story becomes richer, clearer, and more honest when we include the parts that were once hidden. And through this fuller understanding, we gain a deeper view of Masada, of ancient Judea, and of the ways powerful people shape the past. Kindly subscribe to the channel for more incredible videos. Thank you.